what I hope will be a relatively short video for us. I want to introduce what I'm going to really be calling New Day economics. This is a different view on the same economics that we know and love from sources like Krugman and Wells and Mankiw and Taylor and other mainstream economists. I want to poke at them a little bit, using more of the practical economics and get the same results, basically. As a matter of fact, this particular model is very much a fundamental relationship model. We can pound into it a lot of different contextual, socially realistic issues around demand inside of this model without much much ado. And the models of Krugman and Wells, and going back to Marshall and Mills and others, uh, with supply and demand and so on, representative agents. We can even demonstrate diminishing marginal utility in a model like this, but it's an instance of a model like this. And that gets it to something a little bit richer in the story. Uh, Basically, what we're attempting to do is find those what we call shaping structures inside of the decision makers, the demanders, all of them, one of them, some of them, into the way they think about different goods and services. Um, but this piece right here is really important. Um, if if we have a policy, it might be a management policy in a household or in a group, uh, at a NGO, a government organization, which is one of the largest employers around, or a large retail organization or mining organization, it doesn't matter what it is, or at a policy making level that's global, which is basically what tariffs and tariff agreements are. That's policy making writ very large, export imports from beyond countries and so on. It also happens within regions and countries. If these are not supported empirically, this is the old Latin phrase, take a grain of salt, throw it over the shoulder. It's not worth very much. It's a nice idea, but we need to throw our ideas up against the wall. We used to make spaghetti like that. See if it doesn't stick to the wall, though, it's not ready. It has to stick to reality. Okay, and the reality, and this is what we call critical realism of Tony Lawson and Bernard Lonergan, which I've mentioned before. We're looking for limits and gradients. Limits meaning thresholds. Um, Factories are designed to produce 10 to 100 widgets, not less than 10, not more than 100. Period. End of story. Because that's how they figured out what is known from 1914 lot size. That's Henry Ford thinking. Very sharp, very solid thinking. Um, do what you can within the bounds. And gradients, how things change within the limits. That's talking calculus, but it's gradients. We've all walked up and down hills. We understand that. We all know that we can go 10,000 steps and no more. And hopefully there aren't too many hills in the middle. Okay, gradients and limits. Very, very important to our decision-making process. We're going to be looking at something called positive profit survival. Shapes us in terms of um, making something, buying something, using something. Heterogeneous income distribution, the fact that we have different kinds of needs across populations of really samples of consumers, and consumers at every stage in a supply chain, as well as budget constraints. The budget constraint is going to be one of our major things here. And we're going to find that a price setting mechanism in the economy will be kind of straightforward. Most firms set prices, and then we react to them, and then they do a trial and error to get the right price to sell their goods, or they exit the market. They quit camp. Uh, for consumers, we're going to restrict choice by income levels. Okay, that's going to be one thing. You see on the side here, kind of a trade-off. Uh, we're going to use a minimum consumption level for things that we'll call necessary goods. We'll put that on the horizontal axis. And luxury consumption along the vertical axis. Now we've used in-person fun as luxury and education as necessity. We're going to, in this discussion, kind of do the same thing. Let me see if I can move this guy out of the way here. There we go. Let's move him out there. Now we can see. Well, they won't even let me do that. No, we don't want to do that. Definitely don't want to do that. There we go. So we'll see if we can make this work a little bit better. And then we're going to value what we're doing in terms of the consumer fulfilling a need given two things: income and relative prices. The prices relative are going to be given to us for the necessity relative to the luxury. But more importantly, we have a threshold of needs, which the economy doesn't kind of provides in a endogenous way. One cannot live in the Bronx on $37,000 a year, which is the median income from a little bit back. For why? Because rents are far in excess of that in a year. So so how do you do this? Is one issue. And that's also median. There's a wide variety of people in the Bronx, so heterogeneous is extremely important issue. So let's move on to a model, and let me. Of course, you're going to have to deal with my handwritten scrawl here, with pen and ink and a composition book. The basic model is this: the price of a necessity times the number of units of necessity goods plus the price of, that's not labor, that's luxury, times the number of luxury goods. These are our two expenditures, and they cannot exceed, we simply going to exhaust it in terms of how much income. This is the basic principle of you spend what you get. The capitalist kind of works the other way around. They get what they spend. Okay, it's a slightly different view, but same idea. There's a budget constraint there as well. And we can map this constraint on a simple, a lot of Cambridge economists don't like the fact that we're using two goods here, but we are generically enough to be able to tell a story at least. Luxury on the vertical axis and necessity on the horizontal axis. This is guns and butter as well, a little bit of Paul Samuelson days, which many of us were kind of schooled in. We draw a line. The maximum luxury is the income divided by the price of luxury. And at the other end, the maximum N is same income divided by the price of the necessity. Now, if income is 200 and the price of necessity is 20, N max is 10. What is it up here? If the price is 40, income 200 divided by 40, okay, gives us 10. So that would be 10 up here, okay, just to label that. Now, we've also got a threshold of need. In the U.S. and in other countries, you can calculate what this is. What is survival? Maybe a little bit better than survival. You got to be able to get on the bus to go to work. You got to be able to pay your rent, however that is, rent to the bank and mortgages, mortgage payments. You got to pay insurance probably somewhere down the line, which is another issue. Healthcare, a lot of things that are not nice to have, but must have in order to survive. And then maybe we want to thrive a little bit. Now, we have this threshold. Why would we purchase more necessities? Because maybe we want to store them. Maybe we want to have them at hand for convenience. There's all sorts of possibilities. Maybe the price is right, but we don't have any more income. We're going to constrain ourselves in prices and income according to this budget constraint. You see, I do a couple of calculations up here. At L equals 0, PNN equals Y. Solve for N, Y over PN is how we get this number. We'll call that N max. Down here, we're going to simply, this is not hard now, no calculus involved. We're going to think of the amount of in excess, amount of necessities in excess of the threshold as a proportion of how much I have to spend. Okay, literally how much extra N max minus N min, okay, that's the entire feasible range of demanding, consuming necessities. Well, this amount as a proportion of that we'll define over here as A, N minus N min divided by N max minus N min. In our case, it's N minus 3. We're going to use a threshold of 3 eventually. N max, we already know, is 10 minus 3 gives 7. So it's N minus, right, 3 divided by 7 equals A. Okay. A might be, say, 0.4. A is going to be a number between, because you can see this number is always going to be, this distance here from N to N min is always going to be smaller than the distance between N min and N max. It is that simple. Okay, and we can write an equation if we want for this. I've labeled that interval 2. Okay, and 1. Okay, so N is equal, well, it's at least equal to N min, so that's that first term, plus A, or alpha, the proportion of this N min to N max feasible range. And that is Y over Pn minus N min. Real straightforward. Rearrange this with a little bit of algebra. It's very simple to rearrange this. It'll be alpha, or A, times Y over Pn, that's this term here. And we see minus alpha N min and a plus 1 times N min here. So it's 1 minus alpha N min. This is a convenient way of doing it. Okay? So we also see that this N is inversely related to Pn, the price of necessities, and positively related to income. And this is what we see in Wide World of Sports. Okay, so we have a negatively sloped demand curve. Oh my, and preferences and so on aren't there. But preferences, some people might say, are inside of A. That's one way of looking at things. Motivations, randomly selecting it, as some have done. Becker, for example, who abandoned this approach, actually. Gary Becker became a total neoclassicist over at Chicago. But a lot of things can be thought about as this approach. You could also think of a regression if you wanted to, but let's not go there yet. We can then take this and compute L, the amount of, so it's a two-stage decision. First, we decide on N, because that's a necessity, okay? We only make so much money in the paycheck, we better make rent. Okay, we better make utilities, we better make food. Okay, got that, and healthcare and insurance and everything else that has to be paid. Fix the car because it's broken. If you don't have a car, you can't go to work. Okay, so these are the important things, necessities. And given that, this is a condition. Given this, we now compute L. And we just go right back up to our budget constraint to compute L. L, just solve it for L. Subtract PNN from both sides. So we have Y minus PNN. Okay. And divide both sides by PL, and we get this relationship, Y over PL, which is this max up here, the intercept, if you will, minus the slope, PN over PL, okay, times N. And that's the slope of the trade-off. Trade-offs, yeah, are inherent inside of this. I did not have to announce a trade-off. It is a trade-off, but it's all the budget constraint, okay? And expenditures are not to exceed, this is a not to exceed budget of Y. And then we substitute N from here, this starred, up here, and we do a little bit of algebra, oh my God, algebra. Not too hard. It's done for you. It's a good check on your mathematical logical skills, and mine as well. And we come up with this. Now, Anwar Shaikh, Shaikh, in his book Capitalism, recently updated, and also a 2012 article lays this example out. Mark Lavoie uses this in a post-Keynesian Foundation's book. So all of this is well known to the literature, but I'm telling you, as a practicing economist for many, many years, this is the kind of approach we always used. And this is also the approach for those of us who have an understanding of operations research, linear programming. This is how we work. We put things in intervals, and we figure out implications, and everything's a straight line in linear algebra. So we now have two equations. These are going to be called the fundamental equations of new day demand. And so we just do a practical application of this again. Y equals 200, Pn equals 20, PL equals 40. Yeah, and these are opportunity costs of foregoing luxury or foregoing necessities. Yeah, and this might be higher, I don't know. N-min, a threshold of at least 3 out of 10, because that's going to work out to 10, necessities. That's going to make rent there. And we're going to do an alpha or A of 0.4. That's the proportion. The proportion of N minus min divided by max minus min. Okay, that's the proportion. We're going to find a way to estimate that proportion, by the way, in another video. I just want to get through this right now to show just one thing. Calculate N. Sorry for the kerfuffle here. That's an A. And we come up with N, given all of this data, of 5.8. Now that's 2.8 beyond, it's 2.8 beyond the threshold, and you'll see that's about 0.4. Okay, not quite. It's a little bit off there, and that's rounding. Okay, check my arithmetic and leave comments if there's a problem, because my arithmetic is done by hand. Okay, almost some of it in my head, which is going. Okay, but we can see that the relationship here between N and Pn is downward sloping, and it's what we call a hyperbola. Okay, downward sloping. It's inversely related is the important fact that we are expounding here. And then we'll go back to the data, throw this up against data and say, is this true? And every survey says it's true. Good friend Heinrich Hudaker in 1970 came up with a pretty conclusive study in RE stat. So I go along with that. That doesn't change too much, in spite of the information revolution. Actually, it makes it faster. L ends up being, plugging in the numbers, 2.1, out of 5. Okay, so that's the trade-off. Roughly 6 and 2. Okay, that's the bundle. A 6 and a 2. Given a min of 3. Spoiler alert, the next discussion will be this discussion. I'm going to leave it at this, but the discussion is going to be computing a elasticity of necessity with respect to necessities. And we're going to use a little bit of light algebraic algebra to do this computation. How do we get this rate of change? Very straightforward. And many of you might know this as the derivative of x squared is 2 times x to the 2 minus 1 or 1 power or 2x. Okay, it's that kind of a thing. But now it's x to the minus 1 power, and the derivative of that is minus 1 times x raised to the minus 1 or minus 2 power. Okay, so same idea, but I will show that to you in another video. But here's where we can go and calculate and see that the elasticity is always less than 1 in absolute value. And also income. Income's not that important. You're gonna get the necessity whatever your income. Okay, that's the point of this. If all of a sudden you win the lottery, necessities are not a big deal. Okay, is another way of thinking about this. Okay, you can think about it in a lot of ways and compute this. Empirically, necessities are not price sensitive or income sensitive. Always less than 1. All right, so these are called normal goods. I just call them necessities and luxuries. I like that much better. I'm going to leave you with this. It's a great way to stop all this madness. But now we have fundamental relationships that we can now throw a price setting mechanism against it and see if that comes up in reality. And again, New Day economics, critically realistic. The whole point is material being is somehow caused here and forming according to what people need first, and then what they would like to have, hopefully to thrive and grow the human fabric of humanity. All right, the material fabric certainly of humanity. And I'm quoting Vatican II, Gaudium et Spes, right there. Not a bad way to go, not a bad place to start and stop right now. Take care. See you in the next episode. And thanks very much for your kind attention. And be sure to encourage each other daily while it's still today. Thanks. This is Bill Foote, and we're in New Day economics for sure.